Israel faced one of its most challenging military moments since its foundation. But today, the landscape is shifting rapidly. In the past year, the IDF has launched a precise, relentless campaign, systematically eliminating Hezbollah's leadership and undermining their military infrastructure.
There was a time when Hezbollah seemed almost untouchable. It wielded some 150,000 rockets and missiles and tens of thousands of well-trained foot soldiers, flush with weapons and support from Iran, and perched ominously on Israel's northern border. And then Israel decided to go on the offensive in a major way against the world's most dangerous terrorist organization. And now Hezbollah is ruining the day it decided to instigate a war with the Jewish state. Our TBN Israel correspondent Yair Pinto has the inside story from the Israel-Lebanon border.
Guys, we are driving to the north, 1 year after Hamas launched a terror attack against Israel. And 1 day after that, Hezbollah joined the war against Israel. This is 1 year in the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, and all the Iranian proxies and Iran themselves. So guys, there's a rocket just above us. Hezbollah is launching attacks against Israel, and we hear the Iron Dome anti-rocket defense systems intercepting in the air above us. We're now taking shelter just on the ground. Thank you for praying. This is the situation. This is Tomer here with me. Alon, do you think it's okay to get up? Exactly 1 year ago, Israel faced one of its most challenging military moments since its foundation. But today, the landscape is shifting rapidly. In the past year, the IDF has launched a precise, relentless campaign, systematically eliminating Hezbollah's leadership and undermining their military infrastructure. The success of these operations, including the destruction of Hezbollah's tunnels, high-precision missile systems, and logistical networks, has crippled their ability to launch meaningful attacks. Since Hezbollah's initial attack on October 8, 2023, they have launched over 10,000 rockets, missiles, and drones into Israel, targeting both military and civilian locations. This relentless assault has forced over 85,000 Israelis to evacuate the northern border, and Hezbollah's rocket fire has destroyed thousands of acres of farmlands, forests, and homes. In response, the IDF has executed over 70 covert operations across Lebanon. Most notably, the IDF's ground incursion into southern Lebanon has been one of the most impactful military campaigns in this region. As Israeli forces advanced, they discovered Hezbollah's underground networks, some stretching as far as 40 meters below the surface. These tunnels were meant for large-scale infiltrations into northern Israel, but the IDF's rapid response has rendered them useless. In recent weeks, the destruction of Iran's walkway on the ridge of Marun el-Ras marked a significant turning point in this conflict. Once a symbol of Iranian control and influence, it now lies in ruins. The ridge serves as a critical launching pad for attacks on Israeli towns, and its elimination has drastically reduced Hezbollah's ability to strike deep into Israeli territory. In addition to tactical victories on the ground, the IDF has gained a wealth of intelligence by seizing Hezbollah's weapons caches and dismantling their networks. Israeli forces have not only dealt severe blows to Hezbollah, but also exposed the extent of Iran's involvement. As we look towards the future, Hezbollah, though significantly weakened, is still a formidable force. While they have lost many top commanders, their decentralized structure means they can still pose a threat through smaller, more localized attacks. Okay. We just heard sirens, that's why our team is in the bomb shelter next to us here. The IDF is now entering a new phase of operations. Their primary goal is to ensure that Hezbollah cannot reconstitute its power in southern Lebanon. This means systematically clearing every village and stronghold along the Israeli-Lebanese border, removing any remaining Hezbollah forces and ensuring that no new tunnels or missile systems are constructed. Another key aspect of Israel's strategy is building international coalitions to hold Iran accountable. The destruction of Hezbollah's infrastructure in Lebanon has sent a strong message to Tehran. Israel will not tolerate Iranian proxies operating on its borders. The IDF's leadership has been clear. The goal is not only to protect Israel, but to reshape the security landscape of the region for decades to come. This is a spiritual war, and I call on all of you, doesn't matter where you're from, to unite in prayer for Israel, for the IDF soldiers, for our hostages still being kept in Gaza for more than a year now. And please unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem. And together, we will win this war.
Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. He was one of the first reporters on the scene on October 7, 2023, when Hamas terrorists launched an invasion of Israel that would change the Middle East forever. Since then, Trey Yingst has provided consistently insightful and courageous reporting on the Gaza war in his role as chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. He's written about his experiences in his riveting new bestseller, Black Saturday, and he joins us now from Kyiv, Ukraine. Trey, you are everywhere. Today it's Ukraine. Who knows where it will be tomorrow, but you were on the ground in Gaza, in southern Israel, I should say, in the wake of October 7th, Trey. And Black Saturday is just an excellent and riveting account. What is the state of play right now in Gaza and in Israel's war with Hamas?
Yeah, it's been more than 400 days since the invasion of southern Israel on the morning of October 7th, and there's no end in sight for the conflict. And when we look at the situation on the ground, it is dire for everyone involved. Just yesterday, a Hezbollah rocket hit the second largest city in Israel of Tel Aviv, just in the suburbs of that city. We know that Israeli ground forces are still operating in southern Lebanon. They are striking the Lebanese capital of Beirut, and there are still ongoing battles inside the Gaza Strip. And as with most conflicts, the people who are paying the highest price, it's the civilian population, the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, the Lebanese civilians in Lebanon, and the Israeli civilians across Israel. And this is a conflict, again, that does not appear to be ending anytime soon.
Yeah, and Trey, we still have tens of thousands of Israelis in the north evacuated from their homes. October 7th, 2023, a day like no other, obviously. Take us back to the day that really changed the course of history in the Middle East.
It was the darkest day in Israel's history, also the deadliest. Around 1,200 Israelis were killed when Hamas infiltrated from the Gaza Strip into southern Israel, and they entered into the communities along the border known as the kibbutzim. Now, my team and I, as we always do when there are rockets coming from Gaza, we headed straight toward the border. We didn't know on that morning that an infiltration was taking place. And you can see in this video how graphic and violent that infiltration was. They killed soldiers, they killed civilians, and they took around 250 people hostage back into the Gaza Strip. Now, when we arrived in southern Israel, very close to the Gaza border, we could hear that gunfire in the distance. We watched some people die in front of us, and we reported live to our audience what was happening in real time on that dark day.
Yeah, Trey, did you know from the outset that this is not just another Hamas barrage against Israel? This was something entirely different.
I'll tell you when I realized it was different. It's when we saw these civilians being loaded into cars and ambulances to be taken deeper into Israel to hospitals for treatment. And the majority of people were not wounded by rocket shrapnel, as we had seen in the past, reporting from the Middle East for years. They had bullet wounds, an indication they were shot by someone. And that someone was Hamas and Islamic Jihad, these militants that had infiltrated into the southern part of that country.
Yeah, Trey, obviously, and not surprisingly, this profoundly impacted you personally. And you write about in the book everything you saw. Tell us how you processed all of this. The worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust, a heinous invasion, again, a massacre. How do you process that on the ground? You're trying to do a job, but then you're trying to process the carnage. How do you do it?
It's quite challenging. I don't actually process it in real time. I don't feel that I have the time to process it. We're reporting live around the clock for months on end. But when I do have time to reflect on what that day was like and also what the early days of the war were like going into these communities and seeing the aftermath of the massacre, along with the destruction and death that we saw inside Gaza, it is something that you have to take time to work through because it's the worst of humanity on display. There really are no winners in war. And I write about this extensively in Black Saturday, trying to highlight the humans involved in this conflict and reminding people that it can be very easy to get lost in the darkness of war, in the aftermath of such a horrific event. And it's part of my role as a journalist on the ground, not only to highlight those stories, but to cut through a lot of the noise and get to the facts about what happened on October 7th and what happened during the war against Gaza.
Yeah, you do it beautifully in the book, Trey. We have about a minute left before the break, then you will be right back with us. Tell us a little bit more about how you did. You've seen the worst of humanity, obviously, but you saw some of the best of humanity as well over the past 13 months covering this war.
Absolutely. I find that in all conflicts that we cover around the world, there are moments of light amid the darkness. And the war in the Middle East is not unique in that way. But I think that it's something I find special as a war correspondent because we often are covering so much death and destruction. Sometimes you see these moments of light and hope. And I think back to the civilians that I met in southern Israel who were so resilient in the aftermath of this. They really bonded together and tried to not rebuild their communities, but keep what was left alive and support their fellow citizens who, many of whom lost everything. And the same inside Gaza. We came across some Palestinian civilians in the course of our reporting on military embeds, and to speak with them about how they were looking out for each other and trying to ensure they could survive throughout the war was inspiring. It was quite sad to see, but it was inspiring because you see these moments of humanity. You see people trying to look out for their neighbors, for their family members, trying to protect their children. And I think that's very admirable.
Still a very tumultuous time, obviously, in the Middle East, in Gaza, in Lebanon, and beyond. A lot of that leads back to the head of the snake, the Iranian regime. How do you think President Trump taking office once again could not only affect Iran, but affect the region as a whole?
We know there will be a different foreign policy initiative under the incoming administration. That's very clear just based on the information we could gather from the two candidates' campaigns over the past year. But when we look at the Iranian regime, this is a regime that no longer has its largest proxies at the strength they had them a year and a half ago. Hezbollah, their largest proxy in the Middle East, is decimated by the Israeli air and ground campaign. They only have around 20% of their rocket and missile arsenal left. Their entire leadership structure, including Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, has been killed in Israeli strikes. And they are losing more territory in southern Lebanon as the Israeli ground operation advances. Inside Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, these other proxies of the Islamic Republic, have been not defeated, but they have been weakened as a result of the Israeli air and ground campaign against Gaza. And then other proxies across the region, like the Houthis in Yemen or the Iran-backed Iraqi Shia militias in places like Syria and Iraq, have also been hit quite hard over the past year and a half. And so the regime is not as strong as it was a year and a half ago. And it raises questions about what sort of opportunities the incoming Trump administration and the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will look for in this new period. And these are open questions, understanding that the tension remains high between Israel and Iran, and the Israelis are still bracing for the possibility of an Iranian attack.
Yeah, and the Abraham Accords, a possibility there as well. It's been stunning to see that Iranian ring of fire unravel over the past few months, especially, Trey, and you've had a front row seat for all of it. I want to ask you two questions. Number one, what's the morale of the people of Israel right now? You've watched this all in real time over the past 13 months. And number two, since you are in Ukraine right now, what's the morale there in Ukraine? What's the state of play in that conflict?
Israel, it's challenging. It depends where people live. When they're closer to the borders, they feel the war much more. People who are displaced from the north, as you mentioned earlier, and also those who live along the border with Gaza still can't return to their homes. Those who live in the center of Israel are able to go about their lives relatively normally. They go to cafes and restaurants and shops. But as we saw this week, there are missiles and rockets that occasionally slip through and injure or kill people. And so it's something that they have to keep in mind as they continue their lives. But compared to the situation inside Gaza, they are living quite well. when we look at the situation on the ground in Ukraine 1,000 days into the war, this is very complex. We just returned from the Eastern Front lines. I was traveling with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and we visited soldiers at different positions and locations near the front. They are running low on artillery. They're running low on ammunition. They are trying to push back a Russian advance that nearly 3 years into this conflict continues to move forward. And so the morale is quite low in many parts of Ukraine. The president in our interview vowed to continue fighting despite the level of U.S. support. But the situation is dire, and the missile and drone attacks continue against this country. And even as we arrived, the air raid sirens were sounding across Ukraine as Russia launched a large-scale attack against the country's energy infrastructure.
Yeah, folks, it's a world on fire in many ways. And again, Trey is on the front lines covering this every night on Fox News, doing such a great job. Trey, why do you do what you do? Kind of a simple question. Look, in your book, Black Saturday, you detail how you covered Israel's war with Hamas over these past 13 months, at times at great physical risk. What drives you? What motivates you? Why do you do what you do?
I'm interested in humans, and I was presented with a really special opportunity to tell the stories of humans around the world. And my job is unique, and I don't take it for granted. Every day I wake up thankful that I have the opportunity to do this job and to work at such a great company like Fox that provides me with the resources to go out to the front lines around the world and tell these stories in a way that's fair and objective and makes people care about the news. And so I do this because I love it. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I truly remain focused on the mission to getting these stories out to our audience and informing people, again, in a way that makes them care about what's happening thousands of miles from where they live.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.